Okay, good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session for Wednesday, September 10th, 2025. It's 10:04 a.m. My name is Brian Menser, Chair of the Board. To my left, Vice Chair Commissioner Wayne Fournier, Commissioner Carolina Mejia, Commissioner Emily Klaus will be joining us momentarily, Commissioner Grant on Zoom, County Manager Leonard Hernandez, Assistant County Manager Jennifer Walker, Assistant County Manager Josh Cummings. Meeting will be recorded and posted to the Thurston County YouTube channel within 24 hours. And public written public comment may be received up to 2 hours in advance of the meeting and distributed to the board. Action may be taken at this meeting. We have 7 items. We have a hard stop at noon. Items 4 and 6, I'm going to move to the end of the agenda. If we don't get to them today, they will be put on the very next work session agenda, probably next week. Those are the least time sensitive of the items we have to address. So first up is budget follow-up. Ask County Manager.
Thanks so much, Chair and Commissioners. Good morning. On our presentation last week, we mentioned a consideration for Commissioners. The proposed motion is listed. I'll read it. Move to prohibit fiscal year 2025 requests for general fund additions, positions, or reclasses that have an additional general fund expenditure impact. This was revised from a motion that was broader and a bit confusing, and we apologize for that. What we're looking at in this proposed motion is we would like to finish the year with the offices and departments continuing to expend their approved budget. But with the current fiscal situation in 26 and 27, we'd like not to add anything to that doesn't absolutely have to be added. This direction would be to provide clarity to offices and departments, and then also make sure that we're not spending resources evaluating different reclasses and requests if they're going to have an impact to the general fund. With that, I'm here to answer any questions.
Any other motion, then we can discuss it. Okay. I move to prohibit fiscal year 2025 requests for general fund additions, positions, or reclasses that have an additional general fund expenditure impact.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on this motion?
I made the motion last time. I think that I have the information in my mind to say that, yes, we need to make sure we're taking some action to stop the bleeding as we triage and move forward. So I appreciate this staff work going back and clarifying and putting additional things that the board requested. And I stand here making this motion again.
Commissioner Klaus.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this back as a clarified motion. I think that this is a lot cleaner. I do still wonder, have you run this motion by legal? Because, well, I guess I'll just ask that. Have you run this motion by our legal team, and have they said that this is a valid motion?
In what respect?
Prohibiting fiscal year 2025 requests. What are the implications of that? Like, can offices and departments not make requests? Because I don't have the RCW in front of me, but last time we talked about this, I read a state statute that essentially obligates offices and departments to ask for what they believe they need. So would this prohibit the action of making the request, or would it prohibit the board from authorizing such requests?
What I would say is that the departments have already asked for what they need in the build out of the 24-25 biennium. The board approved that. These requests come out of cycle. And so I do believe it's within the board's purview to say, we're not going to consider anything that hasn't already been approved in the base budget.
I think like nothing can prohibit an independently elected official from saying and doing whatever they want.
Sure.
So they can send us something, but what we're doing is we're passing essentially a resolution like I was talking about yesterday.
Yeah.
Saying that this is our position and this is how we feel, and the response, you can ask, but you've already been given the answer, you know?
Right. Yeah, and I don't disagree with the concept. I just wonder, as far as legal implications, if we have the authority to prohibit requests, especially from elected offices. So,
but it's not prohibiting.
It's not.
There's no way we can prohibit an elected official from making any kind of request that they want. They can come, tomorrow, the treasurer could come in here and say he wants money for 100 new horses in his department, and it is what it is, but he already knows what the answer is gonna be. So this is us getting in front of any question saying, hey, you know, you can do whatever you want, but this is the answer already.
Right. And you mentioned that this is essentially like a resolution. Is there a resolution that we should develop that corresponds to this motion, or is the motion enough?
I don't believe this is something that we should develop as a resolution since it's only for 2025.
Yeah,
And I believe that the motion would be enough.
okay.
I mean, I don't know that it's that consequential, frankly, so I'm really not interested in debating this at great length, but I kind of agree with Commissioner Klaus that maybe prohibiting requests isn't the right verb.
I agree.
Motion, it might be better phrased as move to oppose approval of requests for general fund additions. That's why we're telling ourselves what we're doing.
Right.
We're not getting, because what Commissioner Fournier said, we're not doing is kind of what this motion says we are doing, which is.
Yeah.
So
Or
maybe we could,
it's just a word that can't, like the word prohibit may not be appropriate. And it should be like, we move to inform all.
Or oppose approval, I think that's a,
Yep.
I think,
I don't know if that's perfect, but I think that gets us out of the legal concern that you raised.
do you accept a
Sure.
friendly
Even if it's
amendment?
not the ideal.
Are you making a
I'd like to
friendly
just move
amendment?
on. Yes, I would make a friendly amendment to change the word prohibit to oppose approval of.
I think it's a great work to address what you're pinging.
I
Yeah, I
accept
do agree
that.
with it.
And I accept as a
I
secondary.
hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, we have an amended motion that's now been seconded to move to oppose approval of fiscal year 2025 request for general fund additions. Any debate on that amended? Or, okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Abstain.
Extension, okay, that motion carries. Okay, then we're on to the next item, County Manager.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I want to start by thanking the assessors team who in quick order, based on the board's request for information, has put together a presentation in addition to all the work that they're doing. Assessor Steve and Drew, do you mind joining us at the table? And
Actually, I may have a couple members of my staff.
absolutely, please come as well. So as our assessor is getting set up, this was in response to the discussion that we're having about a potential levy lid lift. Again, I want to thank the assessor for quickly putting some information together. We have a presentation that will show, because it's pretty data heavy, we have transitioned it into a PDF and we will scroll through, just go ahead and give the word. We want to make sure that there was none of the data loss. And special thanks to JJ. You the infamous or the famous JJ. Thank you. You've been doing great work. I see your name on emails and I appreciate how quickly you respond to things. Thank you for that. So we'll turn over to you, Assessor.
Would introduce my chief deputy, Linda Rebick. And of course, JJ Olson, between the three of us, north of 50 years of levy experience. So we're doing our best to bring that collective knowledge and make this presentation. In making the presentation, we're endeavoring to make certain that every number and every statement made in this presentation is properly referenced. So it's super important when you refer back to this, that you look at all the references and because there are so many things that influence the answer to the question, what's the levy rate going to be? And so, and then the numbers that you'll see in this analysis are based on the current year values. So they aren't accurate as to exactly what the levy numbers will be in 2027 should you pass a lid lift, because we don't have the values that would be needed to divide the increase into to develop the rate. So we're using a year-old values to get a really good picture of what the choice that you have before you. But understand that and be careful to take each statement and each slide in its totality. So with that, why don't we take a run at this presentation, see if we can get through it in 30 minutes. So the first thing that we wanted to do was produce a one-page document which identifies what we would consider to be the significant elements of a single-year lid lift and a multi-year lid lift. And so first distinguishing factor is when you can run the measure. So a single-year lid lift can be run in any general or primary or special election. Special election date, you know, if somewhere in February is when schools and fire run, that would be a likely place for that if you did a single year. And then in a multi-year, it's only in the general and primary election. And then just an ounce of advice is whichever path you go, you want to choose the earliest option to run it because you want to preserve second opportunity because of how important it is to pass something. And that's calibrated only by the political judgment of whether there's enough time to run a measure well, you know, for instance, in February from today, right? All right, so that's the first distinguishing factor. The second is a single year lid lift does the lift only in the first year. You can do a single, I'm not sure that's universally accurate, JJ. If we did a single year permanent lid lift, it would only increase it in the first year, but it would carry forward, correct?
Yeah, it does.
And then in a multi-year lid lift, you do the lift in the first year, you have a limit factor that you can go up to. You may choose one higher than the 1% that's in statute currently. And you can then apply that limit factor in the next consecutive 5 years. Now, the most important difference is the limit factor between the two. I'd submit to you. I have reached out to MSRC. We have reached out to Department of Revenue to make absolutely sure that our interpretation of how the limit factor functions is accurate. And I think amongst the three of us, I'm the one that's not sure. So I want to be sure. And here's the core question. If you adopt a lid lift that has a 6% limit factor, the logic behind that in my mind is not that you will deploy the 6% each year. That is, each year increase the levy and another 6%. And we have a chart that shows what that will do, but in our mind, that's not, if we put ourselves in your chair, what you would likely do. The value of that 6% is that, if we're correct, if my colleagues are correct, the value of that 6% is you can bank the unused capacity. So it all sort of comes from, again, trying to sit in your chair. If you're going to put a measure before the voters, we're going to go to all of this effort and the voters are going to adopt for the first time a general fund lid lift. You should be, looking forward for a gap of, an eon before you have to go back to the voters again. And because I think the well will dry, right? So having that limit factor, and if my colleagues are correct, if you can bank that capacity, it could give you the ability to maintain a reasonable cost of service delivery increase year after year, not just for the second through sixth year, but because of that bank capacity, if you utilize on average 3%, you'd bank 15% capacity. And so that would give you the ability not just to stay reasonably at pace with the increased cost doing business during the 6 years, but also in the subsequent 5 years. And that gets you a long enough period of time where you're not going to have to go back to the voters. And each year you'll have the legislative authority to determine what your financial challenge is and whether it's going to be met through entirely cuts or entirely the 3% or 6% or some mix of the two. So you still have that authority year over year. And if you manage that, you'll have councilmanic authority to apply to budget challenges for more than a decade. And that, I think that's a goal, right, is to get away from this cycle that we're in. They both require 50% plus one to pass. And there's more information about what's required. You know, if you're going to exempt seniors, which you can do from both of these, the single and the multi-year, it needs to state that those who qualify for the senior and disabled persons exemption program, you just need to state that in the measure. And then you need to determine whether your lift is permanent or temporary. Like you can do the first year, I guess what fire departments might do this if they have a 1-year cost, but then it is removed from the levy in the subsequent year. So if your problem that you have now, you'd have it the third year, but not in the second year, right? So in either case, I can't imagine running the measure and not having it be permanent. Permanent meaning that the increase becomes part of your budget basis. If you recall, our language is the highest lawful from the prior year. Currently, that is our budget plus 1% plus new construction. So making it permanent takes the lid lift and adds that to the current budget, and that remains part of your highest best budget moving forward. Am I on? I'm gonna check with my fact checkers. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to the next slide. Now we wanted to give you a picture of both why we're in this situation, the structural problem, as I would refer to it, and also a bit of a look into voter fatigue on property tax and why there is voter fatigue, and then look at what has occurred in Thurston County's levy at the same time that completely different shifts have happened, changes have happened in all the other levies in the county. So this first graph, which we're looking at, gives you the total assessed value in billions, and that's the green bars. And then the county levy rate, that's dollars and cents per thousand, and that's the county's rate. So if you look at that, the county's rate per thousand has dropped precipitously every year since 2012. And 2023 was an anomaly. For the sake of this slide, it's gives you a clearer view, perhaps, to simply straighten out that drop, because really the effect has been the same without outside influences. This rate per thousand is affected by the choices you make regarding a road shift. If you shift, it changes the rate. For this presentation, just know that's why we make that distinction on the various slides as to whether the shift is reflected or not. Next slide shows, I mean, you're familiar with this pie chart. What we're talking about is not the entire tax bill that folks receive. We're talking about the county's general fund portion, which currently is 8.39% of the total property tax bill on average that folks receive. Let's see. Okay. I made myself a note, and it was what generated the extra slide. I was trying to figure out what the hell I wrote. Okay, so the next slide shows the county levy with and without the road shift. So as a practical matter, when you pass a levy increase, the road shift goes away in the first year. You can choose to go back to a shift in subsequent years as one of your tools, and the limit factor being the other tool that you might have to pass a lid. But this just shows the difference in the rates currently if we analyze it with and without the road shift, because I know that's an active discussion you're having as to whether to continue that in future years. And again, the salient point here is we start out at $1.10 and we're playing down here at between 70 and 80 cents. Next slide. So this shows another view, yes, of the same thing. showing the shift, showing the county levy, including the shift year after year. The next slide you've seen, it was part of, I think, Summer's presentation, but we really thought it made sense to reflect that in here because we are, in the subsequent slides, we're detailing the consequences of a levy lid lift that we think is somewhere in the ballpark of being responsive to the challenge you face. And so it's rooted in what we saw in this slide. And we'd refer to that, as the structural deficit. And this next slide is, the next few slides get pretty messy. There's a lot of lines on them, but they tell an important story. So this is all cities and their associated excess levy rates. So you'll see that there's a lot of variation year to year, but I think the next slide is a little more telling for us. Oh no, it's a follow one, but anyway, this is fire districts. The fire districts change some pretty wildly, but the thing to know about fire districts is it's become commonplace for fire districts to, when they pass a lid lift, to pass a higher limit factor, and it's become, at least in Thurston County, pretty common for the fire districts to exercise the full extent of that limit factor. And so what we're seeing is an escalation in property tax for fire service. I'm your firefighter commissioner, so I'm not down on firefighters. That's not the point. It just is that they are deploying this tool when we have not. That's the point. So when we look at local and state schools, this is also for a little complicated, view of things, but there's been a lot of movement. State schools went to a rate which made the state school property tax different from all other property tax, which is a budgeted amount, which gets converted to a rate, which is why that's confusing for me to say, but it's correct to say. The state went to a rate when they tried to address McCleary the first time. And what they saw is that with property values going up, they were actually generating way more revenue than they needed. It wasn't their intent to do that. And so they went back and went away from a rate back to a budget. At the same time, there was a change in state law and there was a shift, a transfer of the taxing authority, or what we call, I guess, who we attribute the taxing authority to, from local to state. And so that affected, that's this big dip, I think, where they all dip. And then that starved school districts, North Thurston, I think most precipitously in our county. And so then there were steps made legislatively to address that, and that's why that sort of was a recovery from that dip here. The next slide, so this looks at various jurisdictions, and the average levy rate over time. The red being the county. So while ours has dropped, and the scale here is in dollars, if it was in cents, you would see a much more of a drop that is consistent with what you're feeling. But this is in dollars. So the heavy red line is where we are. We end up at 82 cents. Without the road shift, we end up at 75 cents. So that's an indication of that difference between deploying the shift that you have in place now and not, when we're talking about the levy rate, the mill rate for the county's levy, general fund levy. This is where I think we pulled it all together for you, and this one we might leave up for what? Next slide, please. So this tells the story of how, by taxing authority category, how the property tax generated has changed from 2010 to 25, So the large red is county. And you'll notice that we have changed not very much at all in that time. The change that has happened has been because of the precipitous climb in property values that we've seen over the last decade. Not because when you raise property values, it increases each individual's tax rate, but because of how the overall taxing authority of the county is affected year after year as we pass lawful budgets.
Like
And new
year
construction.
after year, it doesn't increase the rate, it increases the amount because there's more value.
Right, and new
So as
construction
our-
plays a factor as well. Yeah.
And what?
And new construction.
Okay.
So remember your math at the very end is highest lawful plus new construction plus 1%. So when there's a lot of commercial construction, for instance, that can make a significant difference year over year. But you look at all local schools, schools also are passing measures with changing that limit from 1% to give them a range to work with. Everyone's recognizing that the cost of inflation is in excess of 1%, and they're trying to, when they go to the voters, reclaim legislative authority within a reasonable framework, and then 6% or 4%. You could set it at whatever you want in the levy once it's adopted by the voters.
When I hear schools and fire departments, fire districts talk about their levy and they go out regularly.
Yes, they do.
They talk about maintaining their levy, and they're always talking about it's not additional, it's not new, it's maintaining the level that we're at. And when you look at that chart, you see it's more leveled, so it's like it is maintained. And what you're telling me is that the county itself has not maintained since 2013, and that's why it's dropped off and continued to drop off.
So there's a lot in there, Commissioner. I will tell you that when fire districts and school districts run a measure and they say this isn't going to increase anything, we're maintaining, we always disagree with that.
Okay.
We don't feel that's an accurate portrayal. In fact, by not doing a replacement levy or a levy that seeks to reclaim the shrinkage in the mill rate, the pennies per thousand, that's when you're maintaining. So what we're doing is pretty much maintaining,
But it's not maintaining anything if it's continuing to decline. It's not
understand
maintenance, that's
understand that, but when you
easy ground.
pass a levy that has the effect of keeping pace with inflation, it is an increase. It just is, which is why
Is that semantics or is that like?
I turn it around on you. I think that it's legitimate for us to think about it amongst ourselves as maintaining. I understand where you're coming from as a fire commissioner.
For me, maintenance would be a level line.
Right, but when you talk to the taxpayers, and you have to deploy trust on steroids. I mean, you need to be so transparent so that you don't get in your own way to have them take the leap with you to stabilize government and to say that it's not an increase. The last slides will probably illustrate that. I mean, there is an increase, the consequence of doing a lid lift. But at any rate, what you'll see is that all the other taxing districts by category have substantially changed their year-to-year structure of property tax. And all of this in response to the structural problem that we continue to face because we have not done a lid lift. And to your point, it keeps us flat while cost is rising. And most of them are keeping pace, and some of them are more than keeping pace with that. So the next slide and your addendum, which would probably be the bottom of the next slide, what I want to talk about here. And this is an example of a multi-year lid lift. This is lifting the rate of $1.225 for the first year, and a limit factor of 106% for years 2 through 6, which is what you're able to do under a multi-year permanent lid lift. And so what this shows is the amount generated. So the total general fund levy would become in the first year approximately, this is estimated on this year's property values, not the year that would be used, approximately $78 million. So if you look at your budget charts as how much property tax generates, the increase would be for this model, for this example, $26 million. We chose that number because of the presentation that was made. You could choose any number that you want there to have the voters decide, but we chose that in order to give an idea of what does that look like to a taxpayer. So let's see that. This is the increase, right?
Yeah.
So what that would cause is an increase in the county's levy rate of 40 cents per thousand with the shift. And without the shift, it would be 45 cents per thousand. So if you pass a levy that has the effect of raising an additional $26 million in the first year, the implications of that are a 45 cent per thousand increase in each property owner's property tax. More detail on that on the next page, but that's what this is. And then each years 2 through 6, what we show is what that general fund levy, what it goes to each year if you were to increase, if you adopted a measure with a 6% limit factor, and then each year as councilmanic authority, you voted to apply that full 6% each year, the total levy by year 6 would grow to roughly 105 million. And that, if it's a permanent levy, that would become your basis moving forward. It's not a recommendation that you do that, but that's what that would look like. In the next screen, we detail a little bit more detail into the impact of the county levy rate of 0.225 on property taxes. So this example assumes a home value of $500,000, which is roughly the median home value in the county. And the total taxes vary depending on where you live in the county, right? If you live in Olympia, you're a little bit higher, I think. Lacey also a little bit higher, and it's due to fire and parks and other measures. This would have been a 5-page page if we detailed for every tax district. So we really looked at the average in order to generate the effect here of the lift. So if the county levy rate were increased approximately 40 cents higher than it is than the current rate of 0.82, the overall average tax rate would increase to 10.229. That's that's everything. That's not the general fund. That's the
Total taxes.
average total tax per thousand for all taxable properties. And this would increase in additional property taxes of 4.914 with the shift from that without the levy lid lift to 5,115 without the shift, but with the lid lift, or roughly an increase of 4%. So the county levy portion would have increased from about $412 on this $500,000 home to about $612. So Cliff's Notes is if you pass that measure, 26 million, the consequence for a home median value of $500,000 is $200 a year. It's not a small ask, but that's what it is. So you can think about if we ask for that, that's That's what we have to sell. We have to sell that that need exists, which it surely does in my view. And that's what this measure is going to mean for you if it's adopted. Then it's important to note that the county levy accounts for only 9% of the total property tax bill. So therefore, even 106% limit factor applied in future years, the impact of the total property tax is modest. Like a 6% on your levy does not increase the total tax bill by 6%, right? You go back to the pie-shaped chart, it's you don't need to go back there, but it's 6% of 8.39%, right? So one of the biggest jobs that the county will have should you adopt this and enter into a campaign mode, which we are not in now. So, but one of your biggest challenges will be baseline education. The general public, a significant portion of the general public feels that 100% of property tax comes to the county and is utilized by the county. And you have to educate people on that. That's not the case. The stress you're feeling is because everyone else has had to do what we haven't done, and that is keep pace with inflation. And so the rest of that pie chart, that 91.61% of what you pay each year does not support the county general levy.
For point of comparison on that 412 to 612, so $200.
Yeah.
The courthouse measure we put on the ballot was gonna be about 130. So this is about 50% more than what that was, but that was just to deal with one issue. This is to deal with like a million issues. So just as for a sense of scale of like what the ask is, we did put that on the ballot. We withdrew it from the ballot with the 2020. The governor took it off the ballot and we did not put it back on the ballot, I should say. But that's just a sense of comparison.
So the addendum, I think is somewhat useful because if the discussion progresses, you're going to need to decide what to do about limit factor if you're going to go permanent multi-year. And so what this addendum does is it gives you the amount generated by a 1%, using 1% of that 6%, which is currently what you're doing anyway with 1%. So it gives you an idea of what 1% generates. So if you're thinking of a limit factor of 6% and you're planning on not on a yearly basis, not going above 3%, then what you're talking about is generating 3 times the number that's in each box for the given year. This was our way of giving you a tool, quick math, to say, okay, so we're going to adopt 6, but we're going to try to not surpass 3 in years 2 through 6. And so in the first year, you generate about, 2.2 million, I think is right. If you were doing 3%, 3 times 784,450 the second year I'm talking about. So whatever your plan is, this gives you an idea of because you're going to have another chart that shows how our costs are increasing. If we don't add FTEs, how our costs are increasing. And so this will give you we think the ability to, in a pretty accurate thumbnail, to say, yeah, if we do adopt the 6 and we do use 3 on a yearly basis, and if the answer to being able to bank this new capacity that you've not used is that you can use it after the 6th year, then you would have that ability to adjust your budget through councilmanic authority by 3% per year for 10 or 12 years, as long as that bank capacity lasts. So this presentation is a mix of giving you the very clear options in the 2 categories, and then giving you as much math as we can give you at this point without the 2027 property values of knowing exactly what those are, so that as you're making these decisions, you can translate the choice into what roughly the revenue that will generate year after year.
Go to questions?
Yes.
Just not through the thought, as you mentioned, the courthouse. And it seems like almost like a similar scenario to the, just where we sit in that, you know, we had a courthouse up on the hill that was not maintained for 40 some years. And then we end up in the difficult position of having to pull the county out of a long-term neglectful situation. And this seems almost, well, it seems very similar, and where you got the county did not keep up with inflation year after year after decade. And we're in a similar situation where we are stuck with the difficult task of getting the county out of a hole that we didn't put it in, but the county's still in that hole. And so, you know, it's tough, but you know, we do have a duty to solve this problem and not pass it on to the next generation.
So if I may, you know, that problem has existed since, I don't know, I think it was 94, 93. So the citizens initiative that decreased the factor to 1%. My entire time in office from 2010, I took office, it was a year after deep cuts. So the office was lost either 6 or 7 FTEs in the preceding year. When I was elected, I did a rather dramatic reorganization to eliminate half of management, to restore part-time FTEs to full-time. And within the same budget, I was able, I think, to restore one and a part of a second FTE in the FTE count world, but do so with no more general fund money. But aside from that, the consequences of that reorganization and the following 15 years, my office has seen cuts. That's what we've seen. We've seen no change or cuts in FTE. Now, I'm not saying that you and the councils before you have not listened to us and that we haven't had tools provided. Have, and we're grateful for every one of those. But when you talk about the county's problem, I'm going to tell you, we're the incubator for that. We're 100% general fund, with the exception of about $40,000 REIT that the treasurer and I arm wrestle over. It's no money at all. So being 100% general fund, or 97.5% general fund, when you have a general fund problem, it's our problem. It is more than any other office in the county. It's our problem, because when you apply that cut to the general fund, it applies to 100% of our office.
And every office has their own version of that same story.
They don't have this version, Commissioner.
But I know, but like everybody is.
No one separate conversation, guys. We need
So
to,
I'm just saying, like,
That's the situation that we have.
we need to stay on point, finish the conversation about the levy lid. We're gonna have that conversation next week.
Fair enough. So that problem existing for that period of time, 2 things have happened. One is that everyone else has increased. I can remember specifically discussions during budget years, Senator Romero and Kathy and Sandra, where they were thinking about this solution because of their challenges. We were coming out of a downturn, and they were cognizant of that the school districts were going to go, and so we didn't go. And then a few years later, it was the fire districts were going to go, and we didn't go.
and my question.
And so the history is part of your problem, because everyone else has lifted and the property taxes have gone up. I submit that if we had done what we needed to do 10 years ago, it wouldn't have been as dramatic as it now needs to be.
The more expensive it gets.
Well, we would have been doing this lift in a climate where everyone else hadn't lifted. And the ease of achieving the lifts for the fires and the schools has meant that they're using the factor, because hell, it overwhelmingly passed. So why wouldn't we use the factor and as the services we're delivering? But the aggregate of that is that there's quite a bit of, property tax threats out there that we have to now overcome and tell that story about. All these other taxing districts have repeatedly come to you and asked, and you've said yes. That's why your property taxes are where they are. But all this time, we've been existing through cuts and reorganization, and creative bookkeeping and that's legit under the law, shifts and diversions and loans. And so we've existed during my tenure using those tools because we haven't gone to the voters to address the structural problem that costs go up more than inflation or more than the 1% factor that we have in place every year. And I'll stop.
Yeah, I need to give a chance for commissioners. Like, great presentation. I'm tracking it largely because you and I had one-on-one and this is my second time through. I don't know if every commissioner has done that. So are there questions about how the mechanics of the multi-year permanent would work? Questions about the single versus the mechanics of the.
I've met with each of you and then, but more recently with the three of you and then this afternoon with the two of you.
Okay, perfect. So you guys can ask those questions then.
And
Then
with the county manager.
Let's wrap that up then and move on. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Assessor. Teague.
Next up is public defense caseload standard implementation follow-up.
Commissioners, we have our public defender, Patrick, and his team coming to the table. This conversation that we are putting up, I feel like we can go pretty quickly through it because the focus of our coming back, discuss this with you, is the last time Patrick did an amazing job of going over lots of information. We decided to let that information just settle for a couple of weeks before we come back. But we are looking for direction from the board on what strategy to employ when it comes to the implementation of the caseload standards. And so as I've already stole some of his thunder, I won't steal any more. I'll hand over to Patrick and lead us through.
Good morning, Commissioners. Patrick O'Connor, Director, Thurston County Public Defense. What I submitted and what's before you today is essentially the condensed version of the slides that we went over with you last month. So as Leonard indicated, set out an objective today and really is to go back through those slides, answer any questions, have conversations and see if we can get to a point of direction from the board on the public defense standard implementation starting in the next biennium. And really it's just sort of circle back, there's so many variables in play for us. What we've tried to do is project implementation expenses over time, but really focusing in on the next biennium and certainly mindful of the climate we're in. So I'm very much mindful of that. We have a state Supreme Court order that directs every county to come into compliance with these standards starting next year. So
That's a really important point that Patrick mentions. We are doing projections based on the current workload and projected workload. This is not an exact science as to what the standards are, or what the caseloads are going to be in years out. What we're really looking for is direction on the approach to implementation. In the last presentation, Patrick mentioned some of the counties are doing 3 years. We believe that's too aggressive. We have a 10-year window by the order to go that long. We think that's too slow. So trying to strike a middle ground. Our staff recommendation is 5 years. As we build this into future years' budget, we'll be working closely with the public defender team to determine where caseloads are at. Things change, they ebb and flow. And even though we've charted out a course of expense, we're not saying that that is 100% what we're going to spend. Obviously, we need to look at that and use it as a guide. But I think on a year-by-year basis, Patrick will be coming back to the board to talk about here's where our caseloads are at. This is where we've grown. This is where we think we have to continue to grow to keep pace with things, et cetera. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to that?
no, it's a great point. And so, our projections are just that. We are projecting some of the numbers we'll go over are high, and I'll explain why. But to Leonard's point, my goal here, I share this with our criminal justice partners as well, is to drive cases in the criminal justice system down through a variety of ways. But what we base our projections on are what the number of cases appointed to our office that we have the constitutional obligation to assign an attorney. And that's everything from driving while licensed, suspended third degree to homicide. So every individual accused of a crime that can't afford to hire a lawyer gets appointed to our office, and it's my obligation to make sure that individual has an attorney appointed. So this is a refresh slide from the last presentation. For us to become compliant with the court order, whether that's 5 years, as Leonard mentioned, 10 years, 8 years, 7 years, again, based on the number of cases assigned to our office in the past 2 years, we thought that was a good best practice to look at the last 2 years. The COVID years were very strange and largely in a good way because case assignments were way down because of the pandemic. But we used the last 2 years as projections. So the numbers presented here are based on those 2 years, and as past 2 years, and as Leonard indicated, you know, this is going to be very dynamic. So we're really focusing on what would it take for the next biennium to get us into compliance with the order based on the filings from the past 2 years. And really, my ask is, again, providing us a direction to plan for a 5 or 10-year implementation strategy. And that strategy can be adjusted and will be adjusted because it'll be very interactive with the board. I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions about this slide from the previous.
Sure, yeah.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you, Patrick.
Sure.
And so just kind of looking at this, right? I'm just wondering, like, you know, as you're talking about these projections, of course, you know, they're based on just because of the cases that are charged by the prosecutor. And so you're like coming in on that data and then seeing how many of those are indigent cases. And so, you know, it really is dependent on the cases that the prosecutor is charging in a way.
It's dependent on a lot of, yeah, certainly a lot of factors, right? Because, you know, the prosecutor's workload is from law enforcement arrests. So the prosecutor gets their cases from law enforcement, they do their reviews, and if they charge a case, the court reviews the case, and if that individual is financially unable to hire an attorney, then we get the case. So certainly they play a role, but there are other, you know, actors as well, right?
And I know the prosecutor has said, you know, just based on this information, he would also need more attorneys. And so then we're just building and building and building and building. And then I'm wondering, have there been conversations with the prosecutor and the courts about, you know, possibly the type of cases that are being charged and maybe reducing that so we're not seeing this huge impact and his office is not seeing this huge impact?
I've had conversations with John about that very issue, and we work very well together. I think there's lots of always opportunities, and I look forward to those conversations because, again, you know, I think they're, again, from my perspective, like we have our own mission, our own vision, but I think a lot of it's shared. Again, when I said earlier, I think all our stakeholders in law and justice, we don't want to see crime rates and arrest rates go up, right? We all collectively want to see those go down. And that, you know, there are different strategies to doing that, but one certainly is working with our stakeholders, the prosecutor, law enforcement, and certainly the courts. But, you know, the court's role is very objective, right? So the courts don't play a role in who gets charged and who gets, those decisions come to them, you know, down the line. So, but certainly as a stakeholder in a process. And I know Commissioner Pointy had some questions about the process of appointment, and that's sort of another layer to just volume, the volume of cases we're getting, whether the you know, arrest decisions to charge, and then a court review of indigency, which is, again, another step in the process of our workload.
And as that workload ebbs and flows, Patrick will be coming back regularly. Because that'll adjust if, for example, it goes down, then what he'll need in the out years will also go down. And we'll be the first ones to come forward with that. And I agree with you, Commissioner Mejia, we need to continue the conversations about core alternative programs and the other things that are so important in this ecosystem of justice.
Well, we also have to have a conversation of priority, right? And which are priority cases and which ones can we really start putting into either alternative routes? Because, you know, I know that Patrick has done a fantastic job and he always has in bringing this information. And not only that, but he goes out a lot for funding and he knows about the programs in the statewide. Right. So I'm I have no doubt there about, you know, the office, but I think that in the situation where we are now and, you know, I think this is just a forward look. I will be asking the prosecutor the same questions that I'm asking you, because I think it is important that we're starting to talk about the priority of those cases, especially as these caseload standards come on.
Yeah, and I think that would be well received and we can have, you know, good productive conversations. Commissioner?
Yeah, I do have a couple questions. Just remind me, so when the caseload standards were put into law this year, was there any discussion about potential funding down the road coming from the state?
So this was the one of the top priorities at the legislative breakfast this year, if you
Yeah.
recall, public defense funding. There were two bills voted, neither passed. Both those bills predated the court's decision, right? So the timing of those bills, the Supreme Court didn't issue this order, right? So the bills failed. The court issues the order. So you know, again, this is me. I'm not a politician, but I suspect there'll be a lot of inertia around the state, and I'm sure we have great opportunities here. Happy to be a part of any conversations with our local legislators on the impacts of that order, even though it's a short session next year. So there should be, again, this is my reasonable inference that there will be a lot of inertia to revisit state funding.
So from
Has to be.
Wasak's point of like, this was a top priority for the Association of Counties and, you know, what we heard from the legislator this year is there is an ongoing legal case as well. And then the legislator just they knew basically it was kind of this, the Supreme Court said they wanted to kind of wait to see on what the legislator was going to do in terms of funding. And then the legislators was, well, we want to see what the court is going to do in terms of the caseload standards. And so they were just kind of like tiptoeing around each other. And so the legislator decided not to pass anything until the court decided. So that's kind of where we ended up.
Okay,
And-
thank you, yeah.
And I know our lobbyist is tracking this item as a top priority. So as there's developments, we will make you aware so that commissioners can weigh in. And if there's any traction on state funding, we'll immediately alert not only the commissioners, but adjust that into our revenue forecast to see how that augments things going forward.
Yeah, and you know, I would say, just based on my experience, in, you know, state budget would be that, that this is a general thing that happens and, where it ends up becoming law. And then that's to my next question. And then the state comes back and has to put in a decision package in order to try to help the counties, put something together. But, then that's my next question for the First of all, I actually want to just give you kudos on, this presentation, because this is the first time this is so good, having the implementation plan, having the FTEs. You gave us exactly what you put into your staffing model, exactly what your assumptions were, and then also exactly what, you know, the names of these classifications are. And this is just makes me happy. And so I'm really excited about it. My last question will be around implementation. What are other counties? Is this kind of your 7-7-7 layout of year after year? Is this kind of what everyone else is doing to try to get things in gear?
Thank you, Commissioner. So
Yeah.
you know, so I'm going to move to the, I
Yeah.
think you're referring to the fifth slide, unless there was any other questions about the other materials. You know, what we put forth in the pages preceding slides is a comparison of the models, sort of, you know, to piggyback on the earlier conversation, but what we presented in these two models is a straight line way to implement as opposed to delaying into years in the future where we're looking at the bare minimum now with big FTE hits in the future, right? Again, there's a lot of variables. Again, hopefully, again, my goal is to not be coming back here in the fifth year, fourth year, eighth year, to be candid, and asking that we still need the same number of FTEs I'm asking for today because we've driven down the workload. That's my goal. But what this model does show is in a 5-year model is a straight line implementation to get us to the 35 attorneys. Again, all these assumptions in 60 months from now about caseload, workload, et cetera. built into this, each model is the full implementation of adding, for example, 7 attorneys to my department next year. They need support. So that's the previous slide that we had up that we discussed, shows it's required under the Supreme Court order and what we believe we would need to implement. The difference being the order is referring to the number of attorneys to become caseload compliant. And the need is the additional support, right? Any organization that adds this many individuals comes with supervision. Lawyers need at least 1 to 2 legal assistants to support them in the work, et cetera. So that's the difference in that distinction earlier. This slide, sort of, as you indicated, walks you through the positions required in each model. You'll notice the 10-year model obviously starts off with a straight line, lower number of attorneys to become compliant, 4 in each year, the next biennium, versus 5 in the 5-year plan where there's 7 in each year, the next biennium. So is that pause for
Yeah.
any more questions about?
I think the one other question I had on this, so then that would mean that you're just kind of slowly distributing, lowering caseloads across your, just kind of leveling that out. And will this 5 years get us to compliance of the law?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Each model will get us compliant. Our biggest need in next year in the biennium is for felony defenders. So the number of felony, all these FTEs, not all of them, and there's a couple caveats in there because one position included in there is an Involuntary Treatment Act attorney because of Maple Lane and the order encouraging waiting for those cases too. But just to be clear, that's that position is funded by the ASO, the BHA ASO, and that's a rate that the county could charge. So again, overall, these numbers are high. They're projected at the top salary of each classification. So we're not going to hire everybody at the top classification. We're going to promote some younger lawyers from within, et cetera. So there's, rather than get into the weeds, the numbers you're seeing are higher than what's anticipated in terms of implementation. But these are the 2 models, and again, as stated earlier, we're competing. I'm competing against other counties in the state. King County and Snohomish County are doing a 3-year implementation plan. We're all recruiting against each other, and we're recruiting out of state. So there's just a lot of market competition as well, because again, if the caseloads coming to our office next year and the following year, specifically for felonies, I have to have enough attorneys internally. If I don't have enough internal attorneys, then I have to send those cases to contract attorneys, and that market has shrunk. That market has shrunk significantly. I'm getting outpaced by Grays Harbor, Mason County. They're all paying more than we are. So I've already lost some of those attorneys. So it's kind of a big market shrinkage in general. That's a little off topic, but I want to continue to leave space for these key slides.
Thank you.
Maybe perhaps we'll move to the next slide, which is the dollars and cents slide. And so what you'll see is the 5-year model implementation expense and the 10-year on the right. Couple caveats. Again, these projections are based on the top end of the salary for each FTE. That's not going to be the case across the board. So those numbers should be lower. Again, those specific Involuntary Treatment Act positions are going to be increased rates from the county to get reimbursed from the BHO. So that's another caveat to those numbers. But as you can see, and this is working with the budget team from the county, when you look at the projections of expenses in 10 years compared to 5 years, you can see the difference, and it's much more expensive over a 10-year period of implementation. But again, that's why our recommendation is to adopt a strategy and to provide us direction of a 5-year strategy. Again, specifically that sets off our strategy, at least in the next biennium. And then as the county manager mentioned, we're adjusting every year. Right? So if I'm coming back to you in 2027 and saying our 2027 5-year strategy needs to be adjusted, and it's actually adjusted down to our benefit, that's my hope.
So if I'm understanding this slide, so under 5-year implementation, your budget needs to be 27 million. It's currently 9. And if under 10-year, your budget needs to be 22 million. So that's a $5 million difference.
In the next biennium?
Yes. That's what we're got in front of us, is building the 26-27 biennium.
Right.
So
$5 million
we're adding
addition.
another $5 million to our budget hole if we go with 10 years versus 5, at least for the next 2 years. I personally want to be better than 10, and I want to collapse this, but we have to start. I mean, I'm looking at you guys. We have to start with the 10-year proposal. That's adding 7 attorneys. That's adding, I mean, I don't see how we can jump in at a more aggressive pace with the budget situation that we have. Commissioner Gray.
I'll, you know, I would say that there are some benefits, to pressure on, like on CJT, on the different administrations that would be required to help fund some of these things. And so for me, it's better to do a 5-year, projection like this because like what he just said around, we're gonna be able to draw down True Blood funding. That, and which is coming down in droves right now for that ITA position. That's what you're talking about with BHA. There are these ways on the back end to leverage the fact that we had to add 5 million. When Carolina goes off to the WASAC and is in front of, you know, trying to advocate for this package to go through, she's gonna say, we had $5 million added to our budget just to come in compliance with your law in the last, you know, and we're gonna need that covered. And it makes it, I mean, I know we could say $2.2 million, but it really does make it clear that the law that they put into place is costing people a lot of money and that they need to cover it. And that money usually comes. It usually
I
comes.
mean, yeah, I understand what you're saying, a little extra pressure, but on the flip side, I think that this is gonna come to a head, and I agree with you, there is gonna be state backfill, because there's no way it can't. And so that's more of an argument to me to start small and wait for that help to come.
But like waiting for help.
But I don't think we have.
I'm just saying, like,
The back-
everybody is familiar with the term unfunded mandate. Like it gets thrown around. This happens all the time. And no, the money doesn't always come. Or it's said, hey, you were given the legal authority to do that through Senate Bill 2015. We gave you the option to find that funding. Just like the housing money, the ERP money dried up, but we gave you the authority to find that money through establishing a local home fund. Like sometimes that
Sometimes-
is the funding, that is the
Sometimes,
opportunity.
but this has reached a head, as Patrick, I think, pointed out, we sued the state government before any of this caseless standard even happened. Like, this has gotten to a boiling point before we've been asked to triple the budget for the public defense. And so this is like at an explosion point. This is not just a simmer or a boil.
Yeah.
This is gonna just absolutely decimate county budgets. And, you know, we may be in the worst spot because we're facing the biggest hole right now, but it's gonna have a wave effect across the entire state. So, you know,
But I'm saying you're right, like
Yeah.
the 10-year.
so I have a little
Yeah.
more confidence that something's gonna break than I do in other contexts where, yeah, we can cry
But it
about
doesn't always happen.
Doesn't always happen, I
Yeah.
understand.
No, but it does, you know, I'll use an example of like the state advisor. So in the last 2 years, the state of Washington made all kinds of changes in housing reform, right? And then last year, it took 2 years, but last year we funded $600 billion across the state, that's trickling down to counties and getting, you know, because they were able to say, here's the total impact, you know, and here's what we're gonna get out. And when it comes to criminal justice, I mean, we just talked about this the other day when I said, is anybody talking about building more beds or putting more people in, you know, making things worse for our clients? No one is talking about that. It's the opposite. It's how do we help clients have the proper attorneys? How do we, you know, and behavioral health? Well, I mean, people who are I don't know what you guys call them, but, you know, felons, let's just go with that.
But they're not our clients.
No, but
They are our clients because it's the
Behavioral
Thurston
health
County Office
system.
of Public Defense.
Citizens, constituents.
yeah. And so, but the point of that is that I feel like that the more we put pressure back, the more funding we're gonna get, and the quicker you're gonna be able to get the resources that you need to, so that's how I look
I'm
at
just
it.
seeing that we had the choices, we had $6 million additional at the biennium or 11 million. We don't have 6, so I don't see how we choose to add 11. It's just simple math.
Chair,
Yeah.
Chair, so I want to circle back to this slide, because I agree with you, when we produced this slide, my eyes are like y'all's. However, what isn't captured in this slide, again, when working with county manager and assistant county manager and the budget team, we wanted to show, and I think rightfully so, the impacts of this order to the Thurston County soup to nuts, which includes, indirect, everything from indirect rates, all the additional expenses listed on our slides. Again, the order speaks to attorney compliance, but what's baked into these numbers are other organizational needs when you start adding this many professional FTEs to an organization. So if we just did attorneys only in the year 5 model, it's much less than what you're seeing there. Like the attorneys only in a 5-year model is $1.7 million worth of salary and benefits.
You're not gonna, I mean, I'm not gonna leave you guys
No, I
high and dry.
know.
Like, you're not gonna be able to retain attorneys if they don't have an investigator or legal support.
100% agree, but
Like, that's worse
And
than.
Patrick, I would caution you that, I know you're trying to be a good sport. But what I'll say by what I know of Patrick, working with him now, this is a very uncomfortable place for him to be. He's not an extravagant budget requester. So he's always looking for how does he be a team player, and he knows that the entire county budget is experiencing major issues, and many of his peers in the law and justice are all having to look at cuts. But I agree with you, Commissioner Minzer, that we have to have a holistic approach, because if we set his office up to fail, however, I just want to stress that there's going to be a year by year play out as this rolls out. These are projections, and to Commissioner Grant, I agree, they did a great job of coming up with a plan. That's what they should do. But are we saying that this plan is going to be realized 100%? No. Each year we'll have to take an assessment to figure out where we're at. But I do think the full cost of service is important to his department. Otherwise, we could see unintended consequences or him having a hard time recruiting.
Thank you. I think just based on that, for me, I'm leaning towards the 5-year. I know we have a huge budget hole and this is something that we're going to have to add. But at the end of the day, we are competing in recruitment across, and I think the sooner we start, I just hate to kick the can down the road and extend that for 10 years when we've just continued to see a rise in cost and everything. And that 88 million might turn into 100 and 200 million. Like, I just, for me, I would rather address this now, and, continue to fight up in the legislature on, that required funding, because at the end of the day, I feel like it is their responsibility to fund public defense. We are providing a constitutional service to, everyone who is involved in our criminal justice system. And so for me, I'm leaning towards the 5-year and start addressing this in a shorter timeline. I know it hurts, and I'm very conscious of our budget hole. But the longer we extend this, the longer we're just continuing to put ourselves in a pinch.
so what I just pulled up is slide 8 that really shows the impact in the biennium. Scroll down, look at the expenses, and I appreciate the county manager's comments. It's just kind of who I am, and I want to make sure that we're being obviously completely transparent and candid in these really difficult times the county's facing, and these are the options that we've come up with.
You're a great team player, Patrick, you and your entire team. We appreciate that.
FTEs versus 21. I don't,
Well,
I'm gonna vote for us to make $5 million more of cuts out of this budget.
I mean, there's another piece to this that
5 million that we can't make.
I know. And another piece of this, I just feel like I need to say it, which is that the way that this is laid out is so clear. I, as a budget chief, never, didn't see very many clear proposals like this when we're trying to fund the jails. I used to be part of my job to do that. When someone came to me with a proposal that is as clear as this one, I would have a hard time not advocating for us to get this decision package in, because you just showed the rest of the state what they need to do in order for them to come into compliance, including building up in the additional, I mean, like even the IT costs and the records. And and this is something Carolina can carry in the WASAC and say, look, this is clear as day. There's no holes in this presentation, and use it to really advocate, talking to Beth, talking to Lisa, talking, to be able to say, this is not just a shot in the dark. This is exactly what we need. Please get it for us. And so that's where I am impressed with.
I could just,
I can appreciate
Yeah.
a good presentation
Yeah.
and clarity, but that doesn't mean I can afford it.
the projections that you've already seen, the
You just magically get it from the state. It doesn't,
the projections you've already seen, it's already baked into the 26-27 anticipated 5-year implementation. So this is not going to add any additional to what the numbers have already been stated. Obviously, we did that simply to move forward. But if the board decides today to do a 10-year implementation, we will change that, and it'll cause the deficit in 26-27 to be that much smaller. So this is not something that we'll have to come back and say, now it's increasing even more. The numbers that you've seen have the 5-year implementation as a consideration.
Are you saying we met yesterday about the budget, we looked at the forecast, that 25% cut, the 5-year plan is implemented in that forecast model?
Yeah. What we did is we took staff's recommendation and just had to put a placeholder in, because we didn't want to have to come back to departments after one. We knew a decision had to be made, and then add to that. If
Did you know that, Commissioner Mensah, that was baked into those
I
forecasts?
didn't know it, but it doesn't change anything about how I feel.
Okay.
Okay.
The whole that we can't, I don't know how we're gonna patch the hole, so.
so if we were to enact that Senate Bill 2015, what does that give us the ability to afford?
HB 2015 would bring in over $7 million, and it would be, we haven't discussed at a board level what you would want to do with those funds. Obviously, if the board would want to, if your question is, could that money be used for public defense? The initial research is, the answer is yes, but I don't want to mix those two conversations. I think we're just wanting to keep we're looking for direction on a 5, 10, or different option that the board wants us to consider. Anything other than a 5-year option will cause the numbers to change. They won't be better.
I was about to ask, I was like, is there a hybrid, right, where everyone feels comfortable? Like, is there a 7 or 8 year where maybe we start at that, 26, 27, it's smaller, but then we kind of start ramping up.
Yeah, that's what I want.
So
I wanna go
can
to
we,
Yes, Commissioner, what we're trying to do for the sake of planning is to know what can we lock into the budget? And then 2, what do we start to approve for positions for Patrick in the first year?
so would the board feel comfortable with a 7-year implementation plan with the 26, 27 numbers for the 10-year plan to start off with, and then ramp it up maybe to the 5-year plan of those additional years?
So year 1, 7, and then down to
26, 27, and then we can and then we could do if the 5-year to make it a 7 total, and the 5-year would actually shrink a little, because we've gotten kind of the employees covered.
And just for the budget team, this is what I'm understanding. We start off with a 10-year implementation plan for
So in
year,
year 1 and 2.
two. And then in year 3, we switch to a 5-year implementation plan. The answer is yes, we can do that, and we will rerun the numbers for but we will take that as staff direction, start implementing.
Is that somewhere where the full board is comfortable?
I feel more comfortable with that. I'd like to know what Patrick's thoughts are on that idea. I like that idea, but I'd like to see the numbers.
So that would mean, just so I'm clarifying from my brain, that would mean
Yeah.
in year 1, we're gonna increase for attorneys and legal support. And then next year we'll give authority for three. I mean, unless money comes in, right?
Uh-huh.
All
Money
right,
comes
right.
in
And
then
then
we're-
three and then
Different-
one
different
in
conversation, money.
investigator. And then it would probably be like five.
Right, it'll be like
Okay.
six or
Right,
whatever it
okay.
is.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
And so what we're looking
Yeah,
for is
reasonable.
looking for the direction to start that. We will
All
definitely
right,
come
thank
back.
you. Makes me feel a lot better.
Okay. Yeah.
We'll try to get there. We'll try to get you there as fast as we can.
We'll take today's direction and run with it. We'll work the numbers
I
for
know
the.
this isn't a formal motion, but it'd be great to see.
I will make it a formal motion.
Okay, thank you.
I'll move to a 7-year total cost projection with 26 and 27 starting on the 10-year, and then the ongoing years moving to the 5-year total cost projection
The proportionate adjustment.
with the proportionate staffing adjustments. Yeah.
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion on that?
Is this to adopt that as the directed policy to develop, or are we still exploring the option? Getting more information, just for clarification.
This is direction to build this into the budget model.
Build into the budget model and then to begin to prepare for the hiring of positions because it's an HR process that things will have to come back to the board and AISs, et cetera.
I feel like I would like to see how the numbers look before making that formal motion to do it. I kind of feel like the latter, what Commissioner Forney said. Okay.
You can sort of guesstimate it out.
In between 2.2 and 1.1.
Yeah, this would be six,
We will definitely bring this information back
five. So we'll go like that.
to show the board what it looks like in the direction you just gave. But if the board feels comfortable, then that direction so that we can start that process gives us the clarity to move forward.
This isn't necessarily a final decision. This is direction to move forward on this, and we'll be talking about this more. There may be opportunities for public comment. Is that?
Well, this initiates a series of other decisions. So it'll initiate we will change the budget projections.
Okay.
We'll come back
I
and
guess the
show
final
you.
decision would be in the adoption of the budget.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
these are putting trains on the tracks and
Perfect.
there's options.
Yep.
just
And the adoption of the positions. I mean,
I'm
those.
gonna call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Patrick, and your team. Thank you, budget team.
Thank you, commissioners. These are difficult times, but we really appreciate the direction and we'll get to work right.
All right, we'll move on to item 5, opioid abatement council interlocal agreement.
Thank you. As we transition, we have Dr. Freiheit, Ms. Strozek coming up to join us. As they make their way, just a special thanks to the hard work that's gone into the establishing of the opioid abatement council and the conversations that have taken place to date about a new ILA that takes into consideration pooling of funds with the other jurisdictions and a decision matrix that would follow the regional housing councils where the council makes a recommendation to the board and then the board has the ability to approve it or not approve it. And if they don't approve it, they send it back to the opioid abatement council for more consideration and then come back with a separate recommendation. Those are the two major changes in the ILA. I will state that many of the stakeholders are anxiously awaiting an understanding of, are we going to move forward with this or not? And then also just for full context, I know that there have been some commissioners that have perspectives in our current budget situation that this funding source could possibly be used to backfill some other areas that we might see cuts in. And so with that, I'll just turn it back to you, Chair, to facilitate a conversation of comments, because I believe the context of decision-making, we hope to walk away from here today with direction on, do we enter into this new ILA with the other jurisdictions or do we not? And Katie's here to talk about if we don't, what that would look like, as we would still have an opioid abatement council and there are still some requirements.
You know, go to Katie then on that.
Yep.
Let's just hear that, like, what would it look like if we hold off? Because I think ultimately we probably will have an ILA, but if I can figure out how we get through the next couple of years, what would that look like? How would the cities be affected? What are their funds? And, so how would it look without an ILA?
Yeah, definitely. So there still would be an ILA in place. We have an existing ILA that's signed by all of the jurisdictions. It's just that the existing ILA specifies that it doesn't constitute a shared budget with pooling of funds. We are required to have our opioid abatement council per the One Washington MOU, which is what's required in order for us to receive and spend our settlement funds. The opioid abatement council will still have to exist with our cities and us at the table. It'll basically serve as kind of an oversight board at that point, where they would be checking most likely on an annual basis to ensure that all expenditures from all of the jurisdictions do meet the approved uses. They would be responsible for reporting out publicly on how the funds were spent, and then they would handle any disputes as well if there was some conflict about whether the funds were being spent in an unallowable way per the MOU. We don't know what the cities would do if we don't pool the funds. The last couple of years, we've gone into this with the expectation that we would be pooling the settlement funds. Thurston County receives just under 70% of the total opioid settlement funds for the county, with the cities remaining or receiving the rest of the 30% between the three of them. The thing that the cities lack really is they don't have background in opioid and overdose response. They don't have administrative support for this type of area. We at Thurston County have housed the opioid and overdose response team as well as our opioid response plan for multiple years now. So the cities have really been great partners in this work, but Thurston County has administratively led this work. So without pooling the funds, it really leaves the cities kind of at a huge disadvantage for serving our community. They don't have background on how they'd spend their funding, and they also don't have administrative capacity to be able to stand up a process to get community input, or background in RFPing out funds in this specific program area either. So it would really be not only a disadvantage to the cities, but also the community. When we talk about opioid settlement funds, we're talking about funding that really is life or death impact. And so we would be leaving our jurisdictions to be making these funding decisions without any background or expertise in this funding area.
Is there any possibility of a hybrid where we provide that support for the city's portion of the funds that they can decide, but the county would have sole latitude over our 70% of the funding?
So we expect to have a continued relationship with our cities. We've had cross-sector involvement with our jurisdictions in opioid response for many years now. They've been great partners, and I expect that to continue regardless of funds being pooled or not. It really would be up to the cities and their discretion as to what involvement they would want for that expertise and technical assistance and county involvement on their fund spending. It could vary depending on the city. They could lean heavily into partnering with the county for that expertise, or they could choose to not be involved at all.
We would just need to make sure that our staff time and resources are considered in that, and that they could be in some way covered, but we would definitely want to see if there's a partnership. And just want to stress that Katie's point that our participation is real key in this endeavor because of the fact that we have more infrastructure and expertise. And Katie's a fantastic resource in this space.
Sure, Grant.
Yeah, I just kind of, as the person sitting on the council, the commission that sits on the council, the first thing I'll say is that I did not get in any way, shape or form the impression from other jurisdictions that they would want to do anything other than what we've, than what Thurston County is going to suggest. I mean, we kind of had like, Katie, she suggests things and they're like, okay. And, and that's kind of where we're at now. I really believe that this funding could be used for some things too. And I believe that the people on the council will allow that. using all of the funding as one comprehensive would maybe even give us more additional funding if we had something. There are multiple projects coming down the pike. You know, the jail, methadone, the crisis care center, and, you know, being able to do that. And this is one of the most important things that I want to make sure I bring up, is that most state and federal grants require match. And if some sort of state grant or federal grant comes down the pike that Shaylin or Jennifer or that Thurston County can draw down on, that pot of money, the more we have in that pot of money that's officially ours, the more we can draw down on match. And you know, and for me, I just also really want us to be thinking about what it looks like when it comes to you know, regional planning and trust and favoring regional collaboration. You know, I think that you know, fragmented funding would be you end up with fragmented solutions. So you know, that's kind of where I'm at.
Commissioner Fournier.
I think the work that you do is very important. I think that this funding is very important. And I think that ensuring that the county is able to meet like the obligations and the things that it has in front of it is critical. So for me, joining into an ILA and pooling the funding when we have a majority of it is funding that is coming to the county, and then giving up our ability to, you know, kind of determine our future with that is dangerous at this time. You know, in a perfect world, the regional model might be preferred, but we've got a lot of things that we're obligated and that are really, really important things to ensure are funded. And if we lose the ability to ensure that that is done, I think that that's a dangerous position to put ourselves in. So I am, you know, I have reservations about the pooled model at this point. You know, kind of like the same situations that we saw come up with the RHC. You know, well, you know, great intentions, great ideas, you know, everybody's got great ideas, but they have to be in alignment with the needs on the ground and the things that we've already built and have going on. Because if we lose control of some funding, there might be programs that we have that we value that we're going to lose. And so, you know, I think that's where my reservations lie.
Commissioner,
Thank you.
Commissioner Claus.
Yeah, I'll say, like, you know, for me, I've been advocating for this for like 3 years for the jurisdictions to pull their funding together. And it was the jurisdictions who were hesitant about it, and there was all these other conversations. And so, you know, first off, I just want to say, like, I don't want to feel that pressure now, because it's like, we've been waiting for the jurisdictions. But, you know, at that time when, you know, we just didn't have the huge budget hole that we're currently in. And so part of like me asking about the ILA and it's not because, again, it's not something that I'm not interested in, but I just want to be sure that whatever existing programs that we have, and that, Katie, you've done a great job in establishing all throughout the county, that those aren't affected with the cuts, right? And if there's this possibility of funding, that we know that we can use that. And so that's kind of where I wanted to know, like, what are those programs? Like, you know, are there programs that are at risk right now? Like, can we continue to fund them with these funds? And it might be something where the jurisdictions are on board with it, or the jurisdictions might say like, well, no, we actually want something different. We want something new. And then where my concern comes in is like, during this time where we are in the situation that we're in, I just don't want us to be put in a position where, you know, all of a sudden it becomes an argument with the rest of the jurisdictions about keeping existing programs and, you know, supporting new programs. I just don't want to get into that situation. I just want to be sure that whatever existing programs we have are supported. And, you know, if I was another jurisdiction, I would want Katie's expertise to come on board as well, right? I would want that. But so I guess I'll just let you answer that piece, Katie, and see, like, you know, just from your lens, have you seen that there's possibilities there?
But if I could just jump in, we'll be presenting, I see Shaylin in the audience, we'll be presenting on the TST funds. And you know, a little purview to that is the sales tax, and I think Summer's behind me, so you might want to just come and join the table here. But since our sales tax projections are down, the TST fund, which funds a lot of different programs, is also significantly down to the tune of over $2 million. And we'll be presenting and showing that we only, since we've been spending on the fund balance, we only have a remaining 2.5 million in fund balance. We've been funding some of these programs as high as $9 to $11 million. And we're bringing in about just over $8 million. So that disconnect creates the need that we're gonna have to cut in some of these areas. And a lot of TST is used for positions in some of our law and justice departments, corrections, carry shop, pretrial services. So yeah, I think that the fact that we have that looming issue is, and we just went over, Chair, the trends yesterday. Until we start seeing those trends move out of how low they are, we have to prepare that fund for an adjustment.
Not even talking about the methadone
Yeah,
requirement
we're
in the
talking about
Thurston County
methadone.
jail.
Yeah, no disrespect to our partners, but like, it doesn't make sense to me, like, if those threats are out there and we know they're out there, to then still continue with a regional decision-making model. And it's not that our partners don't understand or respect those obligations that we have that are extremely important. It's just, you're giving up the ability for us to, you know, kind of our own self-determination. And yeah, and
Chair,
that's.
Porter,
Yes.
Katie should have had the floor. Carolina asked her a question and I feel like that question totally got derailed. So,
I got my answer, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just like.
You're actually next in line, so you have the floor, Commissioner Klaus.
Thank you. I strongly support the pooling of funds. I'll just start with that. That's my bottom line. I want to respond to a couple of the things that were raised. As far as the existing programs, which was the question directed to Katie, you maybe got your answer, but I don't feel like I got an answer to that question when we started talking about the budget. I'd like to know how Katie and our public health staff feel about the conversation about existing programs. And I don't think that the staff got the opportunity to answer that. The second thing is, I'd like clarification on the context, the historical context that Commissioner Mejia provided about waiting for the jurisdictions. So if someone could clarify that for me, I was not really aware of that dynamic of waiting on the jurisdictions. My understanding was that they were waiting on us. So if Katie could clarify, or anyone who knows.
Yeah, so with existing programming, it's really important to us that we don't lose capacity when we look at spending this money. It kind of defeats the purpose to be able to look at expanding, but then also lose really great programming that exists. And we're faced not only at county level for funding with TST and CJTA, but also with kind of some shakeup in federal and state funding as well, which we've really gotten used to navigating this year and are really have been great at navigating in order to not lose capacity locally. When we look at existing programs specifically, Shaylin and I have been working together for multiple years now to try to align to make sure that if things are more appropriate for settlement funds, that we can look at how to move them over there and that we can maximize not only opioid settlement funds, but criminal justice treatment account and treatment sales tax as well, because we want to make sure that not only are we not losing capacity, but we're fully utilizing the limited funds that we have across behavioral health, with looking at existing programming as well and the current asks. We also at Public Health have been working collaboratively with our sheriff's office as well to try to make sure that we can help supplement them with any assistance that they may need as they navigate this new behavioral health world that they're having to work on. I just also connected Sheriff Sanders to the State Opioid Treatment Authority at Healthcare Authority. They have been providing technical assistance and support to the rest of the jails in the state around how to implement methadone, the options for partnering with opioid treatment programs, and how to really do it in a cost-effective way that allows folks to be compliant with the DOJ regulations and ADA compliant as well. So we really are focused on maintaining capacity, meeting current need, and being able to expand. And then also to add to that, regardless of whether the funds are pooled or not, everyone is bound to the same allowable uses, which is a great safeguard. So like Commissioner Grant said, our opioid abatement council, I don't think any of the jurisdictions are looking to lose any programming and really would be interested in maintaining current programming and maximizing capacity outside of that once current programming is maintained. So I think that there would be an advantage to looking at how to work collaboratively and also try to maintain the current programming in addition to that, but doing so with pooled funds with the jurisdictions. We have to recognize also that the programs that are funded right now, they don't just serve Thurston County. Our jurisdictions are partners in those as well. So there is an advantage and an investment from them to maintain those as well.
We haven't had this hard conversation with the OAC representatives yet, because well, out of respect for the Board of County Commissioners, we wanted to have this conversation about funding first. So that conversation about what programs are existing that might need to be supplemented by TSD has not happened with our partners, because we wanted to have this first with you.
And we can't have that conversation if we don't collaborate. That conversation would not work out if we don't decide to pool funds and collaborate regionally. This is a regional problem. You know, the opioid crisis doesn't care about jurisdictional lines. So I think that we need to address this based on community impact and community need. I do understand the pressures on the county budget. We all understand we're facing some really difficult times. And I do think we should certainly explore all cost reduction plans, such as like including state technical assistance. I don't know how much of that piece of the conversation has happened, but it sounds like that connection is being made, which is good. I also am interested in the hybrid model that you suggested, Commissioner Mensah. I would like to explore what a hybrid model could look like. But I don't know. I mean, that would be something that would be a larger conversation, but I do think that pooling the funds would be the best option.
Okay, Commissioner Fournier was next.
I think we was next.
Yep. I'm sorry.
I'll take it though.
I'm sorry writing it down.
Um,
Commissioner Grant, you want to be in line?
Yep.
Okay.
okay, so, I guess I'll ask, so with the RHC, when we did the home fund, the city of Olympia kept a percentage of their home fund for their projects. And so I'm wondering, is that a possibility for us to keep a percentage of our funds, because we do have the methadone, right? And keep a percentage of those funds for, because there are some things, the jail is one of the things where, I mean, technically there isn't, I would love for there to be this regional investment into our jail. But, you know, right now there isn't that. And I just want to be sure that the general fund is going to see that impact, and that's going to be like another, well, it's already commutated into it, into Summer's figures that she's proposed to us. But, you know, as we're talking about these things, like, I just want to be sure, like, if we were to save a percentage of that, I would feel more comfortable with pooling all of our funds if we were able to keep at least a percentage for us to give us a little bit of padding. So is that a possibility?
Yeah, if I may, we would need to sit down and look at what that looks like. There was a very broad question asked. And I think until you see the presentation on the TST funds, that'll put some things into perspective as to what, there's an additional hole there of about $2 million. So
When is the TST presentation going to be?
it's gonna be next week.
Next week?
Is it next week? Yes.
How much money are we talking about with the opioid pooled funds or the
Yeah.
county 70%?
So the county 70%, we just signed on to a couple additional settlements. Prior to those settlements being signed on, the total amount for the county was about 11 million, or just under $11 million over 17 years. So
It's not.
it's not,
Less
$100
than
million
$1
a
It's
year.
not even gonna patch half of
Right.
what TST's hole.
it's
or
a,
It'll barely cover the methadone.
Yeah.
requirement.
So,
So
yeah,
percentage, that means nothing.
so with those,
Throwing out.
No,
it's, we're
I get what you're
seeking
saying.
direction because the jurisdictions are, they're putting a lot of pressure on Katie to get them an answer like now. And that's the next point of the conversation. I understand that you may all need more information, but so our commitment was to bring this forward. We're not trying to rush you in the decision-making. Just know that if we go back without an answer, there's gonna be some frustration there. We can work that through. I just want to make sure that you're aware of the dynamics, and that second presentation is gonna be important, as
There-
well as the ongoing conversation about methadone.
There is also a safeguard in place, if we were to move forward with the pooling of funds and we look to see that the cities have investment in maintaining current programming, which I do have faith that none of the cities want to lose any capacity that we have in this area. They're really looking at keeping that and growing. In the model that we've discussed, the final portion, it gives the county fiscal authority through public health for all of the contracting. So it does require approval from BOCC. And so if there wasn't satisfaction with the proposed plan and the county's needs were not met, it could still be voted down. And there's a clause that is added in a potential ILA draft where if any jurisdictions were unhappy down the line, that they could remove from pooling as well. So that would be built into an ILA.
So just to give Commissioner Klaus the context, because she asked about the history of the 3 years. So when the first settlements first came into it, the county approached the jurisdictions and said, can we use it under all these models? I was the chair at the time, so I attended all the mayor's meetings. And the county brought this conversation up every month for several years straight, asking them, do you guys want to pull the funding together? And the jurisdictions refused an RHC model because they felt at that time, they weren't happy with the RHC funding decisions. And so therefore they said that they would not want to do a model like that. Then the conversation came out to where, well, if the BOCC gets an up or down vote on this, then all the jurisdictions get an up and down vote for this. And so then there was that whole discussion that had to go through. So this has been like a slow process in terms of bringing the jurisdictions here. So, like the county has been willing to partner from the very start. Like we've been asking them. And so for me, it's not about partnering together. I see the value in pooling our funds together, but for me is I just want to be sure, just based like where we're at now, which we were not a couple of years ago, that we are being sure that, our programs are protected as well, and that our funding, especially with the new things that are coming through that, are discussed in executive session, that we have that available. I just want a little bit more of padding so those impacts to our budget aren't as big. And so for me, that's why I'm like, can we save a percentage? Probably not going to be just the impact of $11 million over 17 years. It's not going to be a lot and it's not going to mean anything. But for me, it's more about that overall protection of the programs.
And if I may, to answer your point, I would want to take a look at the ILA again and make sure that that's actually contemplated. So my history is when I got here, this had been with the interim county manager, Robin Campbell. And it was, waiting for the other jurisdictions to come up with the ILA. And so there was no meetings for a long time until the county was asked to get the OAC activated so that then the OAC could come up with a recommendation and then they work with their board, with their governing bodies. So I think where we're at right now is I would just want to make sure, based on whatever board direction, that the vehicle we have in place can actually accomplish what you'll need it to, unless the board is good with the current version of the ILA.
Commissioner Fournier, Commissioner Grant, and myself.
There was a lot of things that happened since I had my thoughts. I need to collect them. So I've already said it. I think that it's treacherous to not have the ability to determine what happens to these funds at this board. I hear, you know, this isn't, when I say that, it's not like, hey, we get to put this into the general fund and do whatever we want with it. That is not what I'm thinking, and that's also not even possible. You know, when I hear Katie say that there are sideboards on what this can be used for. There's allowable uses and then I hear Katie say, yes, we do not want to lose capacity. When you give up the kind of the organizational kind of facilitation of it to a regional group, there is risk that, you know, new shiny things become appealing to that group that isn't necessarily tied to us. And then we only have the ability to just say thumbs down and then it goes back up. We don't, that's unnecessary process as far as I'm concerned. The sideboards exist to make sure this goes towards what it needs to. And if we do not ensure that we are taking care of the capacity that we already have, you know, we could end up losing that and then not having funding to take care of the things that we, you know, we're already working on. So you know, for those reasons, the pooled model and the ILA as it stands, just it doesn't seem like the responsible decision in my view.
Commissioner Grant.
Yeah, so you know, I just want to take this back to the point, just bring it all back. I mean, we have a hole in our budget. We all know that. We need a levy lift. We've got to figure out how to do that. We also have people dying. 4 people that I know died in the last 2 weeks from opioid overdose in Thurston County. 4 different men from the ages of 20 to 26. So when, you know, we're talking about $800,000, and look, I was the chair of the TST committee, so I am very aware that we're gonna have a $2 million hole and that we're gonna need to figure out how to fund those programs because they're vital. And I care deeply about every single one. But when we're funding positions from TST to cover the jail and not behavioral health, you know, not treatment and prevention in our community, because we have a hole in our budget, you know, it bothers me greatly. You know, and I feel like saying that we're not going to go into this ILA is literally throwing it in the faces of our partners and saying, we don't trust that you're gonna help direct money into our region for opioids the right way. But we, the commissioners, we know what we need to do with the money and you don't. And that's flat out the way that I see this. And you know, I understand we need funding, but this money is it's a regional problem. I'm sure that other Lietta and Robert Vanderpool, and I mean, there's like 5 of us, that they are all also very concerned about making sure those 4 boys don't die, and that we think about having methadone when someone leaves the jail when they need it.
We all care
You
about
know,
those things.
I know that, but I know.
Like,
this
please
isn't
don't
my
suggest that
choice
it's otherwise.
I'm not suggesting that it's otherwise, but that's the way that I see this specific conversation. We need to use the funding for treatment and for prevention and for saving lives. And we need to show our partners that we trust them. That's where I'm at.
I mean, we're in so many interjurisdictional things, right? Where we're pulling we're giving a lot of funding into the RHC, which a large majority of it was from public health and social services. And we all decided, so it's not about trust for me. For me, it's about being sure that those programs that we have, and it's not a trust thing. I know a lot of the people who serve on them. I talk to them on a frequent basis, but being sure that in the circumstances that we're in, that we are ticking every box, because at the end of the day, that is our responsibility as a board, is being sure that whatever funds, whatever agreement we're agreeing to be put into or agreeing to share funds into, that everything is all right. Because at the end of the day, like, those people might change. Board members here might change. And I just want to be sure, as we're looking at the long term, not just, you know, this is 17 years. the funding that's going to be coming through, that whatever we're putting out there is right and that it is going to get to the community and that it's not going to affect programs that are already helping a lot of people. And so I just, Chair, if you'll oblige me, I would like to move this conversation until we get the TSD information, because I feel like I'm getting half information right now, where there's a future presentation for TSD, and I would like to see the full picture of this before, I decide. And I am interested into a hybrid option, right? Like, what does that look like? What was your proposal when you were saying a hybrid? Like, what does that entail? What does that mean? The percentage, I had proposed that looks like it's not feasible. It's not going to work. It doesn't make sense. I thought, maybe it might, so it might not be a thing, but,
I'll second that motion.
well, it's not a motion. I didn't make a
I'll
motion.
second that motion.
So, but I know the chair wanted to go, and then I'm happy to make
Okay,
a
I wanted
motion
to
on it.
just make a comment that I do trust the partners to do what Katie said, which is care about the TST programs and the regional programs. But there's a legal mandate on top of all this. I wish we didn't have it. I hate it. But and I don't know if providing methadone to folks in the jail is critical to the opioid problem, but there's a federal law and federal lawyers saying that it's an absolute legal mandate. And I don't trust the cities to care about that, because that's the jail. Only we, and Commissioner McKee made that point earlier, like the jail is our responsibility. So I just don't trust that if I were a city representative, I wouldn't prioritize something that I don't see as critical as probably Commissioner Grant, Klaus do, to like keeping people from dying on the street when it runs, and it's not my jurisdiction that has to run the jail, but we have to. And I don't know how, so I just, I want to get up to an ILA of pooled money, but again, just like the last conversation we had, it may not be 26, 27 biennium that we can do that unless we can, the commissioners can control the 70% of funds. I don't want to, I want to make our decision as little interrupting or disruptive to the cities as possible. If we can provide administrative support and we can help them with their recommendations through the Opioid Abatement Council for their smaller percentage of the money. But I just feel like we have to keep control over these dollars, because they do connect to a critical legal mandate that the county has, and I don't see any other way to fund that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. We know what we have to do. We know what we're mandated to do. And so I can't in good conscience then say, I hope they agree with us, right? If we know what we must do, we can't put it ourselves in a situation where we hope that this other body of decision makers will see how important our needs are. It's an unnecessary step.
Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Klaus.
I'm hearing like points being made about wanting to protect existing programs, and then points being made about a new federal mandate that's come down, which is not an existing program. So I'm just hearing like conflicting justifications for why we shouldn't pool the money.
Different commissioners with different points of view. I never said anything. My priority is the legal mandate, not the existing program. That's my second priority.
Right.
Different commissioners have expressed a different set of priorities.
Okay, I'm just like laying it out there that like we are expressing different priorities, but if, we are all interested in maintaining programs, our staff, who is a subject matter expert, who has been recognized like statewide and nationwide, I trust that our staff know what they're doing. Our staff are coming to us with this recommendation. The speculation about what the cities will do, whether or not they will care about this mandate, that's speculative, and the ultimate decision and ultimate authority lies with the Board of County Commissioners. So whatever is suggested is going to come to us. There's been a lot of references made about RHC. The most recent example with the Maple Court funding and the ERP funding, that ultimately worked through collaboration, through the county manager's efforts to go and talk with the state about our concerns. And ultimately, the state did do what we had asked, almost exactly, not quite, but they did reverse their decision and, take our recommendations. So collaboration works. And, I have seen like a huge improvement in the collaborative efforts through the RHC. And I think that the same thing is possible here. So I trust that our staff know what they're doing and that they will protect existing programs to the fullest possible extent. And the new mandate, I feel, it's to totally disrupt the last 3 years of effort that has gone into this just because a federal mandate has come down. I feel like it's irresponsible to handle it that way. And our staff have put in a ton of time and effort to collaborate with jurisdictions on this. And I feel like we should pool the funds. So I would make a motion to approve the ILA as is.
I second that.
Motion and second to approve the ILA. Discussion on the motion.
Did, not to get in the middle of a motion, but I did hear a request for more information at the TST time from Commissioner Mejia.
That would be a point
Yeah.
of view of
There,
not
yeah,
ready.
they did. I'm not ready yet, so.
You're gonna hear me. I am sitting here and I wish I wasn't, but I'm laser focused on every dollar that possible I'm laser focused on the budget. Until that budget is passed in December, I don't want to hear anything about anything that doesn't involve how do we patch the hole in this budget. So that's just where I sit, where I am.
I would be really interested, I mean, I'm hearing you and maybe I am not, I'm learning this job and I'm used to just trusting people because that's what I'm taught to do. And, but one of the big concerns I have is that I've never seen the sheriff or the jail come before us and show us where their budget, like looking at their budget. We've given them 12 positions or something for a program that's not even in running. But they have a gym, so, for me, it's, we also need to take a closer look at existing resources and whether we, what we need. And I don't feel like we as commissioners have had I have not had a presentation showing me anything about how funding is spent within the jail and how funding is spent within the sheriff's office. And so,
That's true. Sorry.
I mean, yeah, so I mean, that's, so that's kind of where I'm at. And it just panics me to think that we are gonna do all of this and say no to people and hurt feelings and do all of this without full information within our own commission. That's kind of.
For me, I just went, I went through with this board, I've gone through 2 cut exercises. I've gotten into a shouting match with the sheriff, the previous sheriff, not the current sheriff, in board meetings about their budget and we spent 3 weeks every day, 9 to 5. Commissioners sitting here we're trying to cut $8 million. I think we arrived at 3.2 million.
But that's our job. That's why I signed up to be a commissioner. That's what I thought I was coming in to do, right?
Yeah.
That I have budget experience.
saying,
And
it's-
our job is to look at the budget critically and really closely and figure out where we can make and say that.
What I'm saying is,
Yeah.
our goal was to cut 8 million.
Right.
After 3 weeks of wrangling, very heated, very detailed discussion, we cut 3.2 million. Now we're being asked to cut 25 million. I don't see how that happens. And when we sit here making decisions that are missing opportunities to patch holes, I mean, I'm battles, you have your own battle scars from your own life and previous, I have my own battle scars from this job and I see the task ahead. And that's why I'm laser focused right now on every dollar to patch absolute mandates. Not discretionary programs, not things that we'd like to keep, just things that we legally, like with the public defense, we legally cannot cut positions from public defense.
Well, and
We legally cannot,
no,
yeah, so,
there's a whole bunch of positions like that in our
yeah,
budget, though,
exactly, which is why we have to grab every dollar we can.
The last thing I just will say is that I also am, I'm very interested in us being laser focused on moving a levy forward, right? Is that we've got to figure out a way to get more funding. And we need to be I am extremely dedicated to fiscal responsibility and transparency to our community. And so when I think about the decisions we make, I want to show that the decisions that we're making on this board are that we've done our due diligence as commissioners to figure out it before we make a decision. And so that, that's the other thing. I just worry that, we want to go out and have a campaign to get people to say yes. We as commissioners need to show the rest of, could saying no to the other jurisdictions hurt us in that campaign?
I think
You
we're
know?
doing exactly that by exploring this more, like, for me, I have to vote no on this motion. And then I will look forward to learning more from the TST information so that we can, suss out where we need to go. So yeah, I believe wholeheartedly that's what I'm doing.
Further discussion?
Can we get a presentation from the sheriff on budget?
That's the 17th. That's when all the elected officials are gonna
They,
come.
they will come and show us?
Yes.
Okay.
So the 17th is when all the elected officials will come in and present.
And I'm willing to wait until we get more information.
There's a motion on the floor.
I'm just saying.
Any
that.
other discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
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 Motion fails. Do we need to have anything else this juncture?
We can push all the other items. I know I'm sensitive to end at 12, so we'll move all the other items. to our
I
next
have another motion, sir.
Yeah.
I would like to have further discussion on the opioid abatement ILA, which I'm not sure with Robert's rules. Can we bring it back up once something has been voted down?
I think so.
I don't think you're.
The motion
you're not
that was
supposed to
voted
vote
down
no.
was just to approve the ILA today. It
Okay,
doesn't. I think
perfect.
that
Just
precludes
wanted to
us from
clarify that.
Discussing other aspects of there could be it could be a different ILA.
You
Okay.
can't make the same motion again, I don't believe.
And the clerk has nodded her head, so just wanted to just clarify that just
There
with
could be
Robert's rule.
proposal to modify the ILA.
So I would like to move to bring the conversation about the opioid abatement interlocal agreement. Once we have received the information from TST.
Is that a motion?
Yes, I
Second.
said,
Okay, I thought you did last time, and I.
Maybe after the
said-
17th.
Looking a second to
or,
revive.
and,
Yes,
sorry,
yes.
and after the budget presentations from the elected officials.
Okay. Can the chair restate the motion?
Yes, the motion is to revive the discussion on the opioid ILA after the board receives the presentations regarding TST and budgets from elected officials.
Yes.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
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 Did you have something?
I did. I was just gonna ask, we're saying after the 17th, after the budget presentations, but then how far out after? Like, I know it'll be as soon as possible, but that's not part of the motion, so I'm just wondering.
So our next opioid abatement council meeting would fall on Wednesday, the 1st of October, so that would give us a week in between the 17th.
So that's, I think we're all in concurrence. We'd like
Yeah.
to see it that week.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna have to postpone items 4 and 6. Folks want to try to get to the chamber. I think I'm gonna give up at this point.
I know,
Can we
the
do
chamber,
them
should we give
together?
up? Is that what you said?
Give up.
It goes to one,
Can we do the weaving together our story?
All right, we need to do
Please.
that.
Sooner we do it, the better, but I know that there was a hard stop at 12.
Okay, there's a proposed motion there. Does anyone have questions on what this is about?
I do. I would
Yeah,
like,
go ahead.
I would just like some context. There was nothing included in the packet, so anything you can provide.
So this was something that was brought forward a couple months back by the county manager. This was a presentation put forward, and county manager, I'll let you, sorry, I interrupted. I was just on this, like, let's just go.
Yeah.
Charge ahead. Yeah, we brought this forward to the board to get direction to explore a joint program with the South Puget Sound Community College, South Puget Sound Community College Foundation, and Willie Frank Jr.
Third. Yeah, there was a presentation given to Pierce County to all their staff, and so then it
Indiana.
was brought forward, hey, let's give this presentation to staff here at Thurston County, just on, the history, the fish wars, tribal relations and things like that. And then it grew into, let's join with South Puget Sound. Let's, bring in information on the Billy Frank Jr. statue that's being built and moved in and display it here. And then
Yeah, and so this is about, the trading, is about the county government relationships with tribal governments and how they intersect and work together and how we can better improve that cultural awareness. And so South Puget Sound Community College also has this on their work plan. And so that's why they decided to, as talking together, having a proposal for a joint training of our staff and also having a community event later on. So this price is also split 3 ways. The Equity Coalition of Thurston County has decided to partner with us on this. They're actually very excited. And so there's 3 different, it would be 3 different organizations who would be helping put this event together. So, this goes into, I'll let you explain where the.
Yeah, there are funds already budgeted for this, as the board has approved 15,000 for diversity, equity, and inclusion programming. And it would be a 2-day event in October. First day, both of the events will be at the college. The first day would be on a Thursday, training for about 3 hours. We're gonna open it up to all our employees for the training opportunity. The college will open it up to all of their employees. And then on the Friday, there'll be an evening event open to the community and a community forum with questions, et cetera. The idea being that the event builds off itself, and the questions that are asked and discussion that happen on the Thursday then feed into the Friday afternoon questions with Billy Frank III being the moderator and pulling all that together.
How many slots will there be for employees?
About 100. Yeah, the total attendance for the Thursday event will be just over 200. So we may have more. We're just working with the college, how many of their faculty will be able to attend. They only have about 50, then we can open it up to 150.
And this money's already been budgeted through the 15,000 that was authorized for this type of training. Do you know how much of that fund has been spent?
And I don't believe any of those funds have been spent.
Is that for fiscal year 25? So until July of next year, basically?
Our year is
No.
calendar year.
Yeah.
Oh, calendar year. Okay, so we have 15,000 to spend before the end of this year.
If we think it's reasonable.
And where does that money come from? The 15,000?
It was budgeted by the board. Actually, it was requested last year. I think it was a request of Commissioner Fournier.
General fund?
with DV had come to me and said there was no DEI budget, no DEI funding. So then we went to county manager and carved out.
The board made a direction to add it into the budget, and it was added into the budget.
I move to authorize county manager to expend training funds for 2 courses in partnership with South Puget Sound Community College and South Puget Sound Community College Foundation for amount not to exceed 3,000.
Second.
Discussion on that?
This is a very exciting opportunity to have this partnership with the college, this joint event, and to have this opportunity as well with the Equity Coalition. I think it's a very important training, and it definitely puts in perspective just how closely our 2 governments really do work together.
Yeah, I'm on the Billy Frank Jr. Statue Committee, and this next year, there's a 10-foot bronze statue being cast of Billy Frank Jr., a gentleman that lived and grew up just down the road from here. And that statue is being placed in the Washington State Capitol, in the US Capitol. So that is absolutely huge. That is like the representative for all of Washington State that will be sitting at the, looking over Congress for as long as this country is gonna exist. And so this is a time and place to celebrate that, to highlight that, and we're gonna get to host this discussion, and I'm pretty excited about it.
I will just jump in here and say, because I'm hesitant to say yes to this because we are asking everybody to cut budgets and then we're spending money. So, however, I do believe that this specific training, which I'm aware of this training and the opportunity for up to 200 staff, it is a really good opportunity. And I believe that training is really important for staff and for staff retention. And so I'm going in favor of it. However, I probably won't be in favor of any other additional things going forward. So when it comes to spending.
I pretty much echo what Commissioner Grant said and Commissioner Mejia. I think that this is a really exciting opportunity. The money's already budgeted, but it does, like, just after today's conversations, it's really hard for me to like say yes to spending money when we're talking about cuts. But setting that aside, I am in favor of the training. I think it's a really good opportunity, so.
3,000 compared to 11 million for public defense. Let's have a little bit of sense of proportion. So, I'm gonna call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Return on investment is in mental health.
We're
So
going to have
down-
to take items 4 and 6, but we're adjourned.
Shoot.